This year is dedicated to the honor and memory of Rav Eitam and Nama Henkin, who truly epitomized what we're going to be talking about today in Psalm 100, in Mizmor L'Soda, the Thanksgiving Psalm. So this psalm happens to be one of the most popular psalms in the general world, well beyond the Jewish world. And obviously it's no wonder why. The concept of Thanksgiving is something that modern psychology, including some of the leading giants of positive psychology, have demonstrated through numerous studies about the efficacy of the gratitude letter, of caring, of appreciating what we have, and only looking for the good in life. At the same time, this particular psalm was the psalm that was recited in the temple at the time of the Karban Todah, when the Thanksgiving offering was being brought. What is so unique about this psalm? Why is this psalm included in our everyday davening, in our prayers? Every morning we say the Mizmor L'Soda, except on those days when we couldn't bring the Todah offering, which were Erev Pesach, the day before Pesach, on Chol HaMoed Pesach, and on Erev Yom Kippur, which the reason is that the Karban Todah was actually contained, it had non-leavened breads, loaves of bread, and it also had chametz, which was very, very unique in the temple. That of all the offerings, the Karban Todah and also the Shtei Alechem, the two bread offerings for Shavuos, also had chametz. So I wanted to address today what's unique about the Karban Todah, what's unique about this psalm, and what's the message for us here today as we stand on the cusp of such a monumental moment in Jewish history. So the Karban Todah represented the best of all worlds. The Medrash tells us, it's a fascinating Medrash, that in the future, all of the prayers will cease to exist except for prayers of gratitude. And in addition, all offerings will eventually cease to exist except for the Karban Todah, the offering of thanksgiving. Rabbi Samson Rafal Hirsch asks, what is so unique about the Thanksgiving offering that is the only offering that will always continue for eternity? And he explains as follows. He says that in that future time, in the utopian era, everything will be in such an ideal state that there is no cause for prayer and offering. However, we will always need to be grateful. The only way that we could achieve our true significance in the world is by having true gratitude. And I was thinking of this idea that why was the Karban Todah a karban that included chametz in it, if we know that chametz generally was not brought as part of the temple offerings? And the idea is as follows, that what is chametz? Chametz represents the Yetzer Hara, as many of the mystical sources, the Hasidic sources talk about, that it's the Sa'ar Shava'isa. It is that chametz that's rising, that represents arrogance, represents the evil inclination. And from the time of Sfira in general, from the beginning of Pesach until Shavuos, we work on our Yetzer Hara. We work on the 48 ways in which the Torah should be acquired, and we work on the 7 Sfiros and the 49 combinations of the Sfiros, and we work on personal development. And by the time it hits Shavuos, we have hopefully eradicated our evil inclination. And that's what we're doing on Shavuos. And on Shavuos, we're able to bring chametz, because our only desires that chametz represents are only desires for Torah, only desires for heavenly and divine service. And the same thing with the Karban Todah, is that when we are truly grateful for everything that we have, we realize, who are we grateful to? So obviously, we are grateful to Hashem. We're grateful to God for giving us everything that we have. And that's why the chametz in the Karban Todah does not represent the evil inclination. It represents our desires for more. And at a stage of Toda, when we are being grateful, our desire for more is only for godliness. It's more of a connection to God. And how exactly are we supposed to achieve that heavenly state of gratitude? So, in the psalm itself, it tells us, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. You should serve the Lord with gladness. And you should come before the Lord with renana, with exaltation. And how do you do that? It's by knowing that God is our God. And by knowing that Hashem is responsible for everything. And God is only good. As the psalm concludes, Ki tov Hashem la'olam chasto v'adar v'dar munaso. So God is only good. So how do we serve God? Only through gratefulness. It's only through gratitude. It's only by being happy. Ivdu as Hashem b'simcha. And as we know, the divine spirit, the Shekhinah, only rests when somebody is in a state of euphoria, of happiness. And that's why Yitzchak lost his prophecy. He lost his Ruach HaKodesh, his divine spirit, while he was in a state of depression, while Yosef was no longer with him. Our work as a Jew, our mission as a Jew, our mantra as a Jew is to be grateful. It's to be happy, to count our blessings, count what we have in life. And who epitomized this idea? None other than Reb Zusha of Anipoli, the famed brother of Reb Elimelech of Lezhensk, one of the main disciples of the Mizritcher Maggid. And there's a famous story that somebody came to Reb Elimelech of Lezhensk, who the disseminator of Hasidus in Poland. And he told Reb Elimelech that I'm so impoverished. I have so many hardships in life. What should I do? And Reb Elimelech said, I can't help you, but go to my brother Reb Zusha. Reb Zusha has terrible physical sufferings, and he's extremely impoverished. And he went to Reb Zusha, and he looks at Reb Zusha's hut, and he has nothing. He looks at Reb Zusha, he's tremendous suffering. And he tells Reb Zusha all his pain, and he says, Reb Zusha, maybe you could help me. And Reb Zusha, he feels so bad for the man, and he tells the man, he says, I wish I could help you, but I totally can't relate. I don't know what it means to suffer. I live in a state of happiness. That's what we're supposed to do as a Jew. And during this time period, we reflect on the students of Rabbi Akiva who passed away, and they died a horrific death. And despite all of the challenges that Rabbi Akiva had, he still got up, and he was able to find 5 new students in the south, and he was able to perpetuate the Torah and to start again. And even though we lost the Torah of the 24,000 students, today we still have the Torah from those 5 students. He was able to look at the good. And there's the same Rabbi Akiva who looked over at the Har HaBayis. He looked over at the Temple Mount, and while his colleagues were crying, as the Talmud tells us, he was laughing because he foresaw the prophecy that the temple will yet be rebuilt. And Rabbi Akiva, in spite of all the challenges, was able to say Shema in his final moment. He was able to find the good. And when we're looking back at the Mizmor L'Soda, and when we say every morning, Mizmor L'Soda, thank God. Thank you for what we have. How do we thank God? How do we live as a Jew? Ivdu as Hashem b'simcha. We try to be happy, to try to see within the suffering. We try to see the good. And that's really what Rav Eitam and Nama Henkin represented. And that's really what all the Kedoshim who gave their lives, Al Kiddush Hashem, for the state and for the Jewish people, they were our people. They were the people who allow us to live the lives that we live, of Ivdu as Hashem b'simcha, of looking at their sacrifices and saying that that's the sacrifice that is ultimately rebuilding our Beis HaMikdash, that is bringing the final redemption speedily in our time.